One of the most common questions from new backpack hunters is what size backpack to get. It's not a straightforward answer. We're gonna break it down today, how to pick the right size backpack for you and your backpack hunts. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Dialed In Hunter YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in to another video. My name is Josh Kirchner. Today we are gonna break down how to pick out the right size backpack for you and your backcountry hunts. When I first started backpack hunting, this was a question that was pretty heavy on my mind. There's a lot of gear involved in backpack hunting, but the backpack is really like the nucleus of all of it, right? Like it's the thing, it's the center of everything. It's gonna carry everything into the backcountry for you, and fingers crossed, it's gonna carry out your well-earned harvested animal. So, backpacks, there's a lot of different options out there, lots of sizes and lots of different opinions on what to put and what not to put in the backpack, which then has a direct result on the size of the backpack, okay? So right from the ground floor, a great starting point for picking a size of a backpack is take the duration of stay that you're mostly gonna be out for, okay? So I'm not talking about that like once every 5 years or once a year 14-day expedition hunt. I'm talking, what backpack hunt are you doing mostly? If it's a 3 to 5 day hunt, then I think a great starting point is to pick a backpack between 3,000 and 5,000 cubic inches. The general rule of thumb is 1,000 cubic inches per day you plan on being out, okay? So if you're gonna be out mostly for 3 to 5 days, I would probably say a 5,000 cubic inch backpack is gonna get you through all of that, and you're gonna be just fine. Now, rules are made to be broken, right? There's ways to get around this to help extend and get more days out of your backpack, and we'll dive into that here in a bit. Now, the hard part here is picking the right backpack isn't necessarily a straightforward process from one person to the next. All of us have different gear. And some people are more minimalists than others, so some folks are going to bring more gear than others, so it's not really straightforward. Across the board, there's a few items that are going to take up the most space in your backpack, okay? They are your shelter and your sleeping bag, and in some cases even your sleeping pad, okay? There's a lot of sleeping pads out there that are very ultra compact and fairly affordable, but there's still some out there that are pretty bulky, so you could even put that in the mix as well. So what do you do if your stuff is too big and bulky? There's a few things that you can do. You can throw money at the problem and just buy new gear with that's much more packable and ultralight and stuff, and then be done with it. But I realize that's not an option for everyone. It certainly wasn't an option for me when I started backpack hunting. So and realize throughout this process, man, your backcountry hunting journey, this is an evolution, right? Like get what you can get to get into the backcountry hunting, okay? And then build upon it from there. If replacing some gear items isn't on the table, here's a few things to think about to create more space. One, take your shelter, for instance. I used to have a 7-pound tent, all right? The thing was like this big. I was not putting that in my backpack. That would have taken up way too much space. So what I did is I strapped it to the outside of the backpack. Something to think about. Another spot where you can stuff gear on the outside of your pack is underneath your lid. I still to this day put items underneath my lid. That would be a great spot to put a sleeping pad if you didn't have room for that on the inside of your backpack and it was a little too bulky. Especially if you have one of the close cell foam sleeping pads, the big ones that roll up, the old school ones, that will go underneath your lid. Another thing to consider is getting compression sacks, okay? I did this long ago in order to create more space in my backpack. You can go to your local sporting goods store and I mean, you can stuff all sorts of things in there. Stuff your tent in there, your sleeping bag, especially your sleeping bag, clothing items, and put them in the compression sack and really compress that stuff down, and that's gonna open up a lot more real estate on the inside of your backpack. A lot of these backpacks that are geared towards backpack hunting, the bag detaches from the frame, okay? So you can put gear in between your bag and your frame, I've in the past put a tent there before, and that saved a lot of room on the inside of my backpack. And with that, like a tent, you almost don't, I mean, you really don't even know it's there in between the frame and the bag until you take your pack off and see it. There's a few consistents that are gonna be in your kit, right? And I'll just stay at a very high level here. So shelter, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, water filter, stove. Okay, these are items that are, it doesn't matter how many days you're gonna be out, those items are gonna be inside of your backpack. So when you are at home, I think it's a really good idea to try to pack all this stuff in your backpack and really find the most efficient way to put all of those gear items in your backpack. How does it ride? How does the weight feel? And how much extra room do you have after you do that, okay? Because the real variable with backpack hunting is not that stuff that I just talked about. It's food and clothing. Those are the areas that are gonna drift a little bit on how much you bring or how much you don't bring, okay? So food, that's in direct relation to how many days you're gonna be out, right? So, you know, 5 days of hunting, maybe you're gonna have 1 bag of food in your lid and 4 bags of food in the main compartment of your backpack. If all you can fit is 5 days of food in your backpack, then you know that that's all you can fit in your backpack, right? There's a little hack here that I've done in the past. I used to have a 3,500 cubic inch backpack and I would get 9 days out of it. And the way that I would do that is I would pack my food both inside of the pack, but also I would put it in between the bag and the frame, just like I mentioned with the tent. I did it with both on one trip, put the tent and a dry bag full of food in between my bag and frame. And I got 9 days of hunting out of a 3,500 cubic inch backpack, okay? So, and the other thing to remember with food is not gonna be there the entire hunt. Like, you're gonna eat that, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, I have to pack this out just like that. It's gonna disappear throughout the hunt. And in terms of clothing, where clothing comes into play is just what time of year you're gonna be backpack hunting, right? Like later season hunts, you're gonna have to have more room for clothing, which means you're gonna get less days out of your backpack. So this is really important to know as you're planning your trips. Like for me, I know that I'm probably not gonna get more than 6-7 days out of a late season hunt, just because I know I'm gonna have to bring extra clothing with me, okay? And so this is where this all comes down to what I mentioned before. What are you planning on doing the most, right? Like some folks, all they do is they just go early season backpack hunting, and that's totally fine. So you're not gonna have to account for more clothing items later in the season because you're not backpack hunting later in the season. Whereas other folks, maybe they want to backpack hunt throughout the entire year, so they need a little more room to account for that. And if that's you, it's just like, you just know your caps, right? Early season, oh, I can get 9 days. In the later season, maybe I'm gonna get 6. Okay, so just another thing to think about. So I've touched on some of this already, but let's talk about some ways that you can get more out of your backpack. Let's talk about how do you get more days out of a backpack, okay? So one is if you're with a buddy, you can share gear, okay? So I used to do this in the past. My brother and I would share a tent. Maybe he would take the poles and I would take the tent, right? So that leaves more space for me in my backpack. Another thing is considering doing a dry menu. Not my favorite thing to do, but people out there do it. What I mean by that is packing food that you don't have to cook or use boiling water to cook, so you don't need a stove. I did this a little bit in the past, but honestly, when I'm out there backpack hunting, I just really enjoy coming back to camp and having a nice hot meal. I love having hot coffee in the morning, so that's not really for me, but people do it, okay? Another thing to consider on the food front to extend your stay is consider packing your food in early, right? Like, this is a little more difficult with out-of-state hunts, okay? But if you're backpack hunting in your home state, this makes sense. Pack up your food, hike it in, bury it, do what you need to do to keep it away from critters, and then it's there waiting for you when you get there. I've done this with water in the past. That's no secret. That also is something that saves space in your backpack. You can be set for 2 weeks back there if you think ahead. I've already mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again because I think it's valuable and I think there's a lot of room for possibility here. Utilize that frame on your backpack, all right? Pack stuff in between your bag and your frame, and now you're not even using space on the inside of your bag, okay? Whether you're putting food in there, sandwiching food in there, your shelter, whatever it is, you can put whatever you need there and strap it down a lot of times, and then you're not taking up real estate on the inside of your backpack. Lastly, know your gear, okay? Now what I mean by that is know the capability of your gear, okay? So when it comes down to clothing, know what your clothing can handle. Take note of the temperatures while you're out. This is something I do on a regular basis. It's going to give you the knowledge to say, oh no, I don't have to bring that extra layer, or I do have to bring that extra layer, okay? But by knowing, hey, I don't have to bring that, you're saving space in your backpack by doing that, okay? It's very easy to err on the side of caution, and I think that's smart in the beginning, especially if you don't know this stuff. But as you're going through the motions, pay attention to what your gear can handle so you can apply that to future hunts down the road. A classic example of this is something like bringing a 0-degree bag on a hunt that's only going to be 30 degrees, okay? That 0-degree bag may be super comfortable, but I promise you that thing is way more bulky than a 30-degree bag or a 20-degree bag that is going to keep you nice and toasty throughout your hunt. So know your gear and apply that to how you pack, and you're going to be that much more efficient. All right, guys, that's going to do it. How to pick the right size backpack for you and your backpack hunting. Not a straightforward answer, right? There's a lot of variability. Like I said, some of us are more minimalist than others. And some of us are hunting in the late season, some of us are hunting in the early season, some of us want to hunt all the seasons, which is totally fine. But something to pay attention to as you go down this path, if you are new to backpack hunting, all right, is there is no right way to do this stuff. It is up to you to figure out what works best for you, okay? What I hope is that I just provided you with some insight, some things to think about to help you through the process, okay? Backpack hunting is an art, right? And you have the paintbrush, so it's up to you to paint your own picture of it. If you like the video, please hit thumbs up. If you like the channel, please hit subscribe. If you have any tips on how to save space in your backpack, I want to hear them down below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.